Take a trip with me on the most haunted train still running today. Buckle up, it's about to get bumpy. Blackpool Pleasure Beach Ghost Train. This is in England. They say the scariest rides aren't roller coasters. They're the ones that look harmless at first until you realize the terror doesn't come from the machinery at all. In Blackpool, England, there's a ride that's been operating since the 1930s. Generations have lined up for it, expecting just another creaky amusement ride. What they didn't expect, though, was a ghost that refuses to leave. It's called the Ghost Train at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Now, on the surface, it's just a fun fair ride, a dark tunnel filled with jump scares and mechanical figures. But what makes this ride infamous is not the cheesy props or the dated horror music, it's the presence of a former ride operator who locals call Cloggy. Now, he earned the nickname because of his habit of wearing wooden clogs. Their heavy tapping echoing across the floor, if you know what those shoes are. Now, he passed away decades ago, yet visitors still hear the sound of those clogs pacing behind them. Some claim they felt a sharp nudge or a tap on their shoulder only to turn around and find no one's there. Staff members talk about lights flickering on their own, safety systems activating when no one is nearby, and even the sensation of being followed through control rooms late at night. Tourists describe scratching sounds on the sides of their carriages as well, cold hands brushing against their legs, and even shadowy figures watching them through the darkness. Now, one detail May insist on is that the ghost doesn't just appear once in a while, he's practically like woven into the identity of the ride. It's as if the attraction itself has absorbed his energy and refuses to let go. There's even a legend that Tim Burton, the filmmaker known for his macabre imagination, visited the ride and drew inspiration from its eerie feel for one of his movies. I mean, paranormal groups have investigated the site and often describe it as one of the most consistently active haunted rides in the UK. What's fascinating is that this isn't, a decaying abandoned relic. This is a ride that is still running, packed with visitors every summer and still generating new ghost stories year after year. For anyone who dares to board, you don't just play for the thrills of a theme park attraction, you risk encountering the ride's eternal employee, a ghost who never clocked out. The St. Louis Ghost Train in Saskatchewan and in Canada. Now imagine you're driving down a very dark rural road in the middle of nowhere. The air is still, the sky, a blanket of stars. Then out of nowhere, a brilliant beam of light cuts through the night. It looks exactly like the headlight of an approaching train, only there's a problem. There are no tracks, no scheduled service, nothing that explains the soundless glow bearing down on you. This is the mystery of the St. Louis Ghost Train in Saskatchewan, which is a phenomenon so famous it's been witnessed by locals, tourists, and even investigated by students and scientists. Now, the light appears along the old rail line, which has been abandoned for decades. Witnesses describe it as a blinding white or yellow orb, sometimes split into two lights like the lamps of an old kind of locomotive, kind of moving up and down the length of where the tracks once ran. Then, as suddenly as it arrives, it disappears into thin air. The most chilling part of the legend is the story that explains it. People say it's the lantern of a headless railway worker. According to lore, a conductor was decapitated in a railway accident near this very stretch of track. Condemned to wander forever, his ghost still searches for his missing head, holding his lantern kind of just upright as he moves along the ghostly line. Some locals swear the light isn't just harmless though. They say it sometimes chases people, appearing behind cars that try to outrun it. Others recall parking to watch it only to feel as though something unseen was standing right beside them. It's a very unnerving experience because there is no sound, no vibration of steel on steel, just the silent flash of light cutting across the prairie. Skeptics have tried to explain it. A group of high school students once suggested the lights were caused by distant car headlights kind of refracting in the atmosphere. It was a neat scientific explanation until locals reminded them that sightings of the ghost light date back to a long time ago before automobiles. Whether it's ghost legend or unexplained science, the phenomenon continues to this day, making St. Louis one of the strangest and most haunted stretches of rail land in the world. Begunkodor railway station in India. Now picture this, a small rural station in India, the kind of stop where time seems to kind of slow down. The landscape is quiet, the air thick with sounds of crickets, and the station platform lies empty. Then someone sees her, a woman in a white sari standing at the end of the platform. Her face pale, her movements too slow, too deliberate. A few seconds later, she vanishes. This is Begunkodor railway station in West Bengal, one of India's most notorious haunted train stops. Now, the legend begins in 1967 when workers at the station reported seeing a ghostly woman. Not long after, the station master and his family discovered deceased inside their quarters under mysterious circumstances. Whether it was illness, foul play, or something supernatural has never been proven, but the coincidence was enough to terrify the entire town. Word spread quickly, and soon the station had a reputation no passenger wanted to test. For For decades afterwards, Begunkodor sat abandoned, trains skipping the stops altogether. Locals refused to set foot there at night, and the handful of people brave enough to pass by after sunset reported seeing glowing figures on the platform or hearing a woman's laughter carried across the empty tracks. The station became a kind of symbol in the area, proof that some places are just better left alone. But in 2009, after more than 40 years of silence, Indian Railways decided to reopen it. Today it is operational again with trains stopping daily. Officials call the haunting nothing more than superstition, but the locals are not so easily convinced. Even now, some residents will warn you never to linger there at night because the ghost of the woman in white is said to still wander the platform, watching passengers with lifeless eyes. The eerie part isn't just the ghost sighting itself though, but the way this story has blended history and superstition so tightly together. Was it simply an unlucky passing that spiraled into legend, or is there truly something at Begunkodor that does not rest? Whatever the truth is, it remains one of the only stations in the world with a history of being abandoned because of ghosts, only to be reopened and still used today. The Silverpilen in Stockholm, Sweden. Now, if you ride the subway late at night in Stockholm, you might hear a story whispered among commuters. Now, they'll tell you about a train that looks unlike the others. Instead of the usual bright colors, it's a dull metallic silver, sleek but unwelcoming. When it arrives, the door opens to an empty carriage, the air inside cold and still. You step in and then it pulls away, but no one ever sees you get out. This is the legend of Silverpilen, or the Silver Arrow, the ghost train of the Stockholm Metro. Now, unlike most ghost stories, this one has its roots in something real. In the 1960s, the Transit Authority experimented with an unpainted aluminum train that looked starkly different from the rest of the fleet. Now, riders found it unsettling, calling it lifeless and eerie. Over time, sightings of this rare train gave rise to, one of Sweden's most enduring urban legends. Passengers begin to claim that they saw the Silver Arrow pulling into stations long after service hours with no schedule, no announcement, and no passengers on board. Some stories say the people who boarded it never returned. Others insist the train appears to those who are lost, depressed, or in some kind of danger, and that riding it is like being taken into another world. Workers in the tunnels tell of hearing it rushing past, only to find no trace of it on the records. Now, the Silverpilen myth has grown so powerful that even today, many people recognize it instantly. It's become part of culture, the kind of tale you share to warn friends not to ride the last train of the night. And while skeptics dismiss it as nothing more than a ghost story, born from a peculiar looking prototype train, others whisper that the Silver Arrow still glides through the underground, unbound by time, occasionally appearing to claim unlucky passengers before vanishing back into the tunnels. The phantom trains of the London Underground. Now, London's Underground is one of the busiest transit systems in the world. Millions of people ride it every single day. But after the crowds have gone home and the tunnels fall silent, workers speak of things they cannot explain. Deep below the city, there are rumblings and lights that don't belong to any scheduled train. There are voices echoing down the tunnels when no one is there to speak to them. Now, one of the most famous legends actually centers around the disused Idwick Station. Hopefully I'm saying that right. A station that was closed to the public decades ago, but is still occasionally used for filming and training exercises. Staff who work there late at night claim to hear the sound of a train pulling in, brakes screeching, wheels grinding on the tracks, yet when they look, there is only darkness. Some have reported seeing old-fashioned carriages rolling silently through with passengers dressed in Victorian clothing, staring kind of blankly ahead before dissolving into nothing. The Bank Monument Complex, one of the oldest and most confusing sections of the underground, also carries its own ghostly reputation. Workers have reported the sensation of being watched or suddenly just freezing cold air passing through these sealed tunnels. There are whispers of a phantom train that passes through, sometimes seen only as lights flickering across the tunnel walls. Other times, they're accompanied actually by the unmistakable sound of wheels on tracks. What makes London's ghost trains especially chilling is the history behind the underground itself. These tunnels were dug through old plague pits, places where victims of the Black, plague were buried centuries ago. During World War II, many stations doubled as shelters, with thousands of civilians huddled underground, some of whom never made it out. With so much tragedy buried beneath the city, it's no wonder stories of hauntings have grown and endured. To this day, even hardened transit workers admit that there are parts of the system they don't like to be alone in. So the ghostly trains of London aren't just tourist tales, they're kind of woven into, the very fabric of the city, whispered by those who work there, and occasionally confirmed by commuters who swear they've seen something out of the corner of their eye that should not be there. Which train do you want to take a ride on? Let me know. I'm your host, Ashley. I'll see you later. These haunted lighthouses hiding very tragic pasts will shock you and make you never look at a lighthouse the same again. The Smalls Lighthouse tragedy. Now, the Smalls Lighthouse rises from the storm-tossed waters of the Celtic Sea just off the coast of Wales. It seems like a lonely sentinel, guarding against shipwrecks, but the sea it watches over has claimed far more than ships. It has claimed sanity and even life itself. The lighthouse was built in 1776 at the demand of merchant shipping companies' frustrations who were losing both vessels and profit in these waters. Dock Master Phillips got approval for the construction and bizarrely went with musical instrument makers Henry Whiteside's design for the lighthouse. Now, this turned out to be a bad choice. In 1801, two men, Thomas Howell and his assistant Thomas Griffith, who were stationed there, being a lighthouse keeper then was not really a glamorous job. It was a test of endurance, patience, and mental fortitude. Now, the Smalls Lighthouse was isolated, battered by wind, waves, and freezing spray. Food was scarce and supplies had to be hauled up, precautiously, and contact with the mainland was very rare, sometimes non-existent for weeks. Now, during their shift though, Griffith passed away suddenly. Some say it was illness, others whisper that the harsh conditions drove him to a fatal mistake. Howell, left alone, faced an impossible problem. How could he deal with the corpse when he had no tools or help? He did the unthinkable. He lashed Griffith's body to the outside of the lighthouse. Day after day, the corpse kind of swung in the wind, and Howell was forced to live with it. Sailors who passed the lighthouse later reported seeing the skeletal arms sway in the wind, an eternal ghastly kind of reminder of, just isolation and demise. Now, the psychological toll was unimaginable. Howell himself later recounted feeling haunted, sometimes seeing Griffith's shadowy figure moving in corners where no one could, and this gruesome tragedy spurred authorities to rethink lighthouse staffing, increasing crews from 2 to 3 men for both safety and just mental well-being. The Blue Lady of Hilton Head Island. Now, this is devotion beyond demise. Now, the Blue Lady of Hilton Head is a ghost story about Caroline, the daughter of a 19th century lighthouse keeper at the Hilton Head Island Rear Range Lighthouse, or Leamington Lighthouse. Now, the Hilton Head Island Lighthouse in South Carolina is famous not just for guiding ships, but for spirits that roam its lantern room. This is the tale of Caroline Fripp, who again is the daughter of lighthouse keeper Adam Fripp. Now, it was 1893 and a devastating hurricane slammed the coastline. Adam, a man known for his diligence, refused to leave his post. The light had to stay lit, he believed, to protect the sailors who relied on it. But during the hurricane, he collapsed and passed away in the lantern room, his heart unable to withstand the storm. Caroline, only a young woman, promised to stay and keep the light functioning, so she took up her father's mantle. She donned a flowing blue dress, the color her father had always admired, and climbed the spiral staircase into the lantern room. Now, for a week, she maintained the light, sometimes